I think it's a lot of times the people that you think are going to be the ones to help you, they're not the ones. It's the
Mm,
most unsuspected person you might not even pay attention to, or you might not even really connect with. So
yep.
God made it very clear, this is your exit, Angela. Time to
Mm,
go. Job well
mm,
done.
yep.
Go on to the next chapter. I think a lot of times we get protective and guarded about this is our genre and you shouldn't be doing that. And that's just not going to help anything. At the end of the
Mm.
day, this is the bridge that we need to create for the culture.
This is James Rousseau, aka Trig, and let me welcome you to the Core Solutions Show. Family, welcome to another episode of the Core Solution right here on Holy Culture Radio. And as always, I try to bring you interesting, exciting, and forward-thinking guests. Today is no different. Today I'm joined by Angela Jollivette, an award-winning music supervisor, producer, and cultural tastemaker. No, take it in, fam. After a decade with the Recording Academy's Grammy Awards department, she launched Moonbaby Media in 2017 with a mission to bridge faith, culture, and storytelling through sound. Her very first project was Oprah Winfrey's drama Greenleaf, which earned her both an NAACP Image Award and a Stellar Award, and helped launch Corin Hawthorne's breakout hit, Won't He Do It? Something we've played a lot, which is a certified platinum anthem that made Billboard history. Since then, she has shaped music for Sunday's Best, Netflix Rhythm and Flow, VH1's Black and Crew, Norman Lear's Clean Slate, and most recently, Ebony Studios' tribute to Kobe Bryant, Sincerely LA. She's a visionary who continues to elevate artists and connect faith with culture in very powerful ways. Angela, welcome to the show and Holy Culture Radio.
Thank you, James. Thank you for having me. Hey, y'all.
It's so good to have you. Let me ask you a question. I love to ask everyone to get people in a deep knowledge of who you are at the core. What's one thing you can share with my audience and the Holy Culture audience that you would say most of your best friends don't even know about Angela? What's one thing you might be able to share?
I don't know that they don't know too much about me. The people
Hmm.
that are actually close to me know me very well. But I
Sure.
would say now I am walking in my purpose more than ever. I
Mm,
would say that. And I don't know if they know that because I am locked in with
mm.
him
Come on now.
24/7 now, more than my friends, to be
Come on.
honest.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to bring that energy over to them now.
I
So.
love that. I love that. Well, I think a obvious follow-up question they would have is, man, one, you need to get around to telling me, sis. But two, what caused such a shift to you operating in your purpose?
I think the world itself, the state of the world is very
Mm,
discerning for me. And I don't know. I just think, over the last year, we've seen a lot happen, that we've never seen happen before. And I think
mm,
it's more important than ever to get closer to Him in this time in your life. I think that He's the only roadmap
mm,
to where we need to be right now and to make it through everything that's happening simultaneously, whether it's personally, business wise, whatever
mm.
that looks like for you right now. I just think, he is very much needed in the forefront. We won't be able to navigate what's happening without him.
That's
So over the last year, I've had some time to sit with myself between projects.
mm,
And I think that was by design. Be still and know was the message that continued to just slap me in the face all
mm,
year long. And I didn't understand what that meant initially. I was like, you don't want me to do nothing. You want me to just sit here. You don't want me to make any moves. And, it was uncomfortable for a while. But, during that time, I did learn exactly what that means,
mm,
with the trust and the trusting him and leaning more into him and not my own will and the way that I want to do things or I've been trying to accomplish things. And he's
mm.
just made it very clear that he's already figured all that out for me. And
That's
I don't
good.
have to continue to bump my head against a wall to do anything.
Yeah.
So, it's just a personal journey in a season that he has me in. And it's just something that I feel like, we're going to continuously grow spiritually with him throughout our
Yes.
whole entire life. And I've always been close to him, but this is a different season for me. So,
Yeah. That's so good. And, one of the things that jumps out to me, even from our first conversation, is I think sometimes when you're outside looking into spaces that you operate in, sometimes we can very much want that success and to be in that space and that ecosystem and all the things. But two, I think the other perspective is sometimes when you get in those spaces, you have an assumption about what those spaces are going to be like and getting used to and maybe caught up in the trappings that are there, right? And so what would
Mhm.
you say to one, that assumption, and two, what are some of the things you're bringing from those learnings that is what I hear, hardening those convictions for you?
I just know I was, very close to a lot of things that I've been praying about, that I want to happen and, see come to light creatively and professionally.
Mm,
And he continuously closed that door in my face.
mm,
And I don't think it was, any ill will with that happening, when in
right.
hindsight, we know that that's a protection for us. But at the same time, he just wanted to be very clear that you're going about it the wrong way. And I
Mm,
don't think, we think we're doing anything wrong, obviously, when we're going after our dreams and our goals. But I think there's something so much bigger on the other side if we just allow him to lead the way and use his roadmap instead of our
mm,
own. And he's going to allow us to do it our way. He's going to allow us to make those mistakes. He's going to allow us to try to figure it out. But once you really surrender to him
yeah.
and give that over to him, it is not as hard as you have been trying to get to where you want to be. And I think, we get lost, especially in society and the world, because we
Mm,
feel like everything moves so fast and we have to be chasing things and,
right.
going about them a different way because of just the way the world works now. But it is truly the most simplest thing in the world to just really surrender and
Mm,
give things to him and let that weight off of your back,
yes,
because it's exhausting, right?
it
And
is.
so he will wear you out is the point until you are tired and you just have no choice but to hand things over to him.
That's so good. We haven't talked since I've been back from vacation. I came back into office last Thursday, and during vacation, not unlike other vacations, you go out with the purpose of time off, getting reset physically, mentally, spiritually, etc. But this one was a bit different. I found myself on the boat, on this cruise ship, looking out at the water and seeing the endlessness of the water, right? The calmness of the water, the stillness of the water, and the word that hit me was just what you said: simplicity. Right. First, it
Mm-hmm.
was simplicity, and then look at the magnificence and greatness of what the Lord creates, but it's still super simple. And so I started jotting in my book. I tried to do more writing and reading than anything digital, and I was writing down the way I was feeling, right? The
Mm-hmm.
the the spiritual place I felt like was at, what I thought I needed to do, and things I thought previously were priorities that no longer feel like priorities. So when I
Yep.
got back, I could look at that list and compare it a week at a time. I do these clarity breaks on Friday where I try to just sit down in a diner, have a pancake with no syrup, and just
Oh
go through
no.
things. Right? I know it actually works with butter. Grain pancakes with butter work.
That,
My
that got
mom
to
would.
be a good pancake that mixed for
It
to
is
get away with
good.
that.
It is
Okay.
good. I think my mom would approve. But looking at that, I think will help me, because then the words that came to mind, getting off the boat, coming back home, was, why do we make it so complex?
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And so I feel like you and I couldn't be more aligned on some of that. And so when you think about what you'd like to see going forward, what does that look like? Maybe just spend a few minutes talking about how you started your organization, and then what you would like to see it accomplish.
Well, I had prayed. I was at the Grammys for a decade, and I knew that, I wanted to transition at some point to something else in my career
Hmm.
because, I do understand he's given me many gifts. And, that was just a season and a chapter of my life. And so I didn't plan to stay there forever.
Mm,
But I didn't know how it was going to happen. And I didn't know what the exit point was going to be. And I knew, music was definitely going to still be in the equation. But, I always say it was an assignment from above because,
hmm.
I met someone that, I call my angel to this day because God places people in your life. And I think it's a lot of times the people that you think are going to be the ones to help you, it's just been my experience, they're not the ones. It's the
Mm,
most unsuspected person that, you come in contact with that, even on a certain day, you might not even pay attention to, or you might not even really connect with, in your day to day world. But I think, when you're open and you're allowing the spirit to guide you, then, you're receptive to those things. And that's kind of what happened with me because, I come in contact with a lot of people at the academy. It was a membership driven organization. I'm dealing with
Mm-hmm.
members and committees and just, industry people and artists all day long, every day. But, there was someone that was brought to me that needed help from me. And I was just always an open person, and I still am, in terms of, giving back and making sure that I'm continuing to pay it forward and,
Mm-hmm.
definitely be a resource for people. So, a good friend of mine from high school introduced me to now big Emmy winning composer named Amanda Jones. And, she was up and coming. She was looking to, get connected potentially to the Academy. I oversaw television and film. And, we ended up having lunch one day. So basically, at the time, I knew music supervision was kind of something I was interested in. I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
going towards it 1000% yet. It's kind of the evolution of a DJ. I started out as a DJ, and it's something that I know growing up was very, very influential to me. Soundtracks, they're very much a lost art, and it's something that
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I want to really hone in on in my career now moving
Mm-hmm.
forward. But Amanda came to me, and we met up, had lunch, and a year went by after that. And for some reason, I went into my inbox, something in my spirit said, hey, see what's going on with her. And I reached out a year later, almost exactly, and was like, hey, we should get together again. So when we got together again, we met in the same place, had lunch at the same table, all of that. And now, lo and behold, Amanda's working in the building upstairs that she wasn't working in when I first met her. And that happened to be Lionsgate. And
Mm-hmm.
she was in the music TV department of all departments. And, I was actually trying to offer her an opportunity. I was working on a short film called Where is Beauty, and starring Guapole, and it was a silent film. And we
Mm-hmm.
were looking for a composer. And, I was talking to her about doing that film potentially. And she's like, oh, well, I'm in the building now in the TV department. I'm like, oh, wow, that's crazy. So she starts talking to me about a show that she's working on, and it's called Greenleaf, and they were going into season 2.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, I know you don't want to stay pigeonholed in certain genres and, things of that nature, but, I think you would be really good for this. And, would you be interested in doing it? And
Yeah.
then I was like, yeah, of course, and, I talked to a lot of people. So it was kind of just another conversation I was having. I didn't know where it would go. But, she was like, send me your resume, send me a playlist, and so everything she asked me to do, I did it. I went on my annual summer vacation. She was like, we're not ready to get started. It'll be a few months in the fall. When I came back, she reached back out. You should come in and meet my boss. I went in, met the head of TV over there at Lionsgate, had a great, meeting, conversation. And then it just went on from there. Send me another playlist. Then I got in touch with Oprah's right hand, and
Yes.
just kept going down the path. And so my point of all this is like, sometimes you can plan, and try to do things for a result. And
Yeah.
sometimes you don't have to do all that.
Yeah.
You are being led into where God wants you to be at
Yeah.
any given time if you are receptive and open to that. And I could not have planned my exit if I wanted to.
Mm.
I didn't know how that was going to happen.
Mm.
And this was how it happened. And at the end of the day, like, I had to leave the academy because it was a conflict of interest. I
Right.
no longer could stay in my position because I oversaw gospel music and I oversaw television and film. And so now I was up for potential nominations for the soundtrack I produced in both of the categories I oversaw. So
Yep.
God made it very clear, this is your exit, Angela. Time to
Mm.
go. Job well
Mm.
done.
Yep.
Go on to the next chapter.
That's so good.
So people always ask me, like, do you miss it? Do you want to be there? I mean, look, I did what I was supposed to do in the time that I was there. I accomplished all the things I wanted to accomplish, and I was ready to move on to what God had for me next. And he rewarded me quickly. At 6 months after I left, everything that could have happened to me with the Stellar Award, the NAACP Award. We had the number one with
Mm.
Corinne and Broke Her. We had a number one with, Leandria Johnson with Better Days. We had Dove Awards. Anything that could have happened to me six
That's
months
so good.
later. So God, affirmed this was your exit, and job well done. So
Yeah, if you don't mind, I just want to jump in one quick second because there's so many gems in what you said, and I want to back up to the first gem, which was being open to someone who needed help. May not have been assumed to be helpful to you, and or to your point of unsuspecting helpers, right? Had you not done that, all these things you're talking about potentially would not have gone to fruition. And I think it's kind of back to the point of God can use whoever he wants to use at any time he wants to use if you're open. And by the way,
yep,
if you don't try to inappropriately open doors that he's closed, I just don't want to miss that point either, because that feels like a what do you call it, a pivotal moment in
yep.
your journey.
It was, and it still is to this day. And I don't forget anyone. There
Yeah.
was someone similar to Amanda that got me into the Grammy organization, Alan
Mm,
Foster. And, he was there for 10 plus, 15 plus years and brought me in under his wing. He oversaw R&B and hip hop. So there's
mm-hmm.
been specific people in my life that have opened gateways for me
That's
that
good.
I know God has placed and used to do that. So I do not take that lightly, and at the end of the day, I am forever grateful to whoever brings me through any door.
Yeah.
So,
So if you were looking out 5 years from now, man, it's so funny because when you say 5 years, it seems so long now when you think about 5 years from now.
yeah.
So maybe even say 3 years from now, what do you want to be able to say Faith and Sync has accomplished at that point?
Well, Faith and Sync is a vessel right now to
Mm-hmm.
open other doors and gateways. God basically gave me that vision during this past year, like I said, where I was sitting with him, because it was just pure alignment with my
Yep.
career and, the way he's placed me in television and film and in the faith based area of music. And I just don't feel like anyone has been putting the necessary spotlight on this genre,
Yes.
specifically in media, in television. Even right now, there's a lack of programming. Sunday's Best is not on air, Greenleaf is not on air, Kingdom Business is not on air. Like these shows, are very much necessary. And for some reason, we're not seeing them be produced as they
Mm-hmm.
should, right? So, that's something I've been actively working on, is now putting on an executive producer hat and creating my own television and film. And it's a hard sell and it's a hard battle, I feel. It's a market that the studios don't necessarily seem to understand at
Mm,
times, unless it's from a certain perspective or lens. But, there is something happening in terms of music and the momentum in this genre. Of course, you're on the forefront of that, with your station, Holy Culture, and Christian hip hop and R&B, and it's definitely something that is no longer just underground and
absolutely.
the black sheep of the business. This is the evolution in the sound of gospel music. And
Absolutely.
whether, gospel traditional accepts that or not, like this is happening. And this
Yeah.
new generation wants to create and just express themselves differently about their faith. So for
Yeah.
me, it's about creating space for them on the media side, because I just know how important it is to have that outlet to market them, to break them, to obviously financially create another revenue stream in terms of, their music. But I've had my hands in doing that already on the shows I've worked on. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm just very much focused on creating my own content in this space. And Faith and Sync was born out of that. Like being able to position this conversation and get the visibility for this space. And it's just something that is on the ground level right now because God just told me to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't worry about the partners and the sponsors and the financial part of this. Just do it, and I'm going to do the rest for you. So I launched it in LA in April, and then, we did it in Atlanta at Reach Records the end of July. And now I'm talking about going to New York and doing it in November, the end of this year, before we head into 2026. So
Excellent. At some point, you'll have to, excuse me, at some point, do one here at Holy Culture Radio. We have to get that
I'm
on the
working on
docket for
it.
26. I know. And so I love how you also articulate that a vessel to repeat how you said it. Because well, let me tell you how I paraphrase it back. A vessel to close the divide between faith-based artists and the music world, so to speak. Is
Yep.
that a fair way of saying it?
Well, I want to bridge the gap in the culture, right? Mainstream, secular, and non secular.
Okay.
So for me, that's also part of this equation because, there's this thing where we see a lot of mainstream artists that dabble
Mm-hmm.
in this space in terms of doing like a faith based record, inspirational record, gospel record, whatever you want to call that. But it's
Mm-hmm.
just a necessary evil because at the end of the day, a lot of gospel artists may not like it, when
Mm-hmm.
Glorilla wins Best Gospel Artist at the BT Awards, but it's just something that is helping the culture more than it's hurting the culture.
Mm-hmm.
I think we all have a testimony. Who's to say that she doesn't deserve to speak on hers and do a record like that, right? She's an
Mm-hmm.
artist and she's supposed to be able to articulate whatever's in her spirit. So, I think a lot of times we get protective and guarded about this is our genre and you shouldn't be doing that. And, that's just not going to help anything. At the end of the
Mm.
day, this is a bridge that we need to create for the culture, and this is not just for one side. Then we start to talk about politics, Dems and Republicans. You know what I mean? If we start getting into all that, it becomes that sort of argument. So I just think, God wants us all to use our gifts to glorify Him and bring this to the masses the best way that we can do that and not
Mm-hmm.
keep it isolated to just us.
Right.
We're trying to garner new hearts. And the only way to do that is to let that message flow throughout the world
Yep.
the way
Yep.
it needs to.
Gotcha. And I don't want to. I won't belabor it and getting digging deeper into that. I think we've had plenty of shows that have covered the sacred versus secular divide and whether it can work or not. What I'm hearing you say is it can, and artists who are faith based can partner with those who are not and produce things that carry the gospel out to broader populations. That's what I'm hearing you say. With that as another part of your platform, what as people listen to this and say, "My gosh, Angela Jollivette, I'm in. You have wonderful experience, wonderful background. You've been on noted platforms, on noted projects. How do we help? How do we get involved? What do we need to do to help you make this vision a reality for Faith and Sync, etc.?"
Well, I'm not doing this for me. First and foremost, I always say, like, I'm a champion of the artist, right? And I'm really always looking to create opportunities and platforms for artists
Mm-hmm.
beyond even gospel artists. I still work with just artists in general. But I
Mm-hmm.
think, in terms of the gospel side of music specifically, sometimes you see where artists just don't understand the necessity in understanding the business scope of what they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
I think if we are creating opportunities or platforms like Faith and Sync, or, even obviously trying to license your music, like these are gateways that we're creating opportunities. And it's important that, obviously they prey on the way they operate and move and use their discernment. But you have to understand there's people out here that are trying to be champions for them,
Got it.
and you have to be discerning of who genuinely obviously wants to do that wholeheartedly. And I think sometimes they think they might have it all figured out, and that's just not the case. You can never have enough promotion, you can never have enough marketing, you can never have enough interviews. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Like, to say like, well, I'm already streaming and I'm already building a fan base and I'm already doing, well, that's not enough. You got to
Right.
keep going because the world
Absolutely.
don't know you yet. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Especially if you're independent. So all that to say is just really getting behind the movements I feel like people are creating on their behalf and really supporting that and sharing that with their fan base and, just stepping up in whatever way they can so we can come together. I
Yeah.
don't think this is about I'm doing it my way and you're doing it your way. And no, we can't afford that right now. We
Yeah.
need to unify and we need to build together and we need to partner and we need to, once again, get this message out to the world the best way we can.
Right.
So,
And so what I'm hearing you say is at least right now, well, I think overall your vision, but particularly right now, as the vessel gets off the ground, community work is of the utmost importance in coming together as a community for these events and doing those events, there are times of learning, right? Times of sharing, times of edification, times of getting clear about where you're going and even what the sync business is. Cause I think there are oftentimes misconceptions or just people don't know, to your point. They've been focused on one stream of income, such as, DSPs and streaming and or events, but maybe they haven't gotten here. So it feels like you accomplish a lot in those different event settings.
yeah, I mean, I think, people gravitate towards things they think are established already, right? Like
Mm,
I'm going to go talk to Amazon Music, or I'm going to go talk to, Tidal, or whoever it is, right? Because in their mind, I'm going to connect myself to a brand that's already established. And that's great, right? But is that brand wholeheartedly representing you and
mm,
what you stand for and working specifically towards your mission? And so that's what I'm saying. Like the
mm,
artists need to understand whatever level this business model is on, one day it will be an Amazon Music, right? It will
mm-hmm,
be a bigger brand, but understand this is necessary for you to connect at this level. Just like
mm.
when you were an artist doing your first interview and no one knew who you were yet,
Correct.
and someone was willing to speak to you, right?
Correct.
You can't forget those layers that go into a business. So it just works the other way around with Faith and Sync. Everyone doesn't know Faith and Sync yet. It's a startup grassroots for me, but it doesn't mean that it's something that you shouldn't be a part of now, in this conversation, especially when a lot of these artists are reaching out to me about, can you sync my music?
Got it. Got
This
it.
is something where it's like, obviously I am a benefit to you at some
Right.
level.
Right.
And, I don't want this ever to be about that because
Right.
I'm not that type of person. But at the end of the day, you want something from me. But at the end of the day, I'm creating this for you. And you
Right.
need to see that this is also an opportunity for you.
Hey,
So,
listen, say it. What's that scripture? Don't forsake humble beginnings. Don't,
yep,
yeah. Listen, your point's taken 200%. If you could recognize what I've done, my experience, and for lack of better terms, my pedigree, and that's not bragging, that just is what it is. Recognize the overall thing I'm building and be a part of it
right.
early. Yeah, I'm with you
You got
200%.
it, James. You
I'm with you
paraphrased that one
200%.
good. So.
Where can people sign up to be a part of the movement?
Well, we could go to faithistheculture.com. That's the brand I created. God spoke to me once again with the Faith in Sync. And, I heard him clearly say to me, I'm the culture. And, we use that rhetoric a lot where we the culture, cancel
Mm-hmm.
culture. And, I clearly heard God say, forget all that. I'm the culture. And
Right.
so, I went and checked it out and saw if it was available to trademark and online and all that. And so now that's my new brand.
I
Faith is
love
the
it.
culture.
Faith is the
So
culture. Love it.
yep,
Love it. Well, listen, y'all. Tap into Faith is the Culture. Please understand the heart and the strategy behind this mission that Angela's under. The heart of, listen, she heard God say, "You are going about it the wrong way. Step back, my child." And she stepped back and has been obedient and has taken all that experience. And by the way, I just want to say this. Her and I have not talked about this at all, but I just know from personal experience and others I've talked to, when you step away from the up to the right stratosphere you were moving in to build something new, that also means you've forsaken not only, I shouldn't say you've forsaken the relationships, but you've forsaken the economics and such often that you were doing, right? And now you're making an investment in a number of ways of something. I always think we should celebrate people for doing that and affirm them. And so I just want to do that and say thank you, Angela, for taking that chance and investing in what God is telling you to do. Again, family, it's a vessel for all of us, okay, to
right.
cross that divide between the sacred and the secular. So go to faithistheculture.com right now, get signed up, be a part of this thing, and keep us posted, y'all. Any any
Yes.
any any shout outs you want to give or anything before we log out?
I just want to say keep him in the forefront. That's it. Like keep him right in the forefront. Nothing else matters right now. That's it. I don't care where you are, what you're doing in your life. Nothing
Amen.
else matters.
Amen. 200%. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, James. Thank you, Holy Culture.
All right, family. Until next time, be informed, be empowered, be accountable, family.